Hey, everybody. I hope you had an incredible day today. Welcome. We are on day 27 of our 30-day challenge. And today we're going to talk about trust, the key to source embodiment. How is it the key to source embodiment? What does it mean? How do we build trust? Now, let's dive in right away. First of all, one of the themes that comes up a lot in healing sessions, and especially in DNA reprogrammings, is people that, and it's usually healers or people that are working in, high stress environments and also environments where they have to interact with people or hold space for others. Trust is one of the most important aspects of ourselves when it comes to empowering ourselves. And the destruction of trust is actually one of the key ways to manipulate, suppress, control, and to disempower the human. And if we understand what that really means, the disempowerment of the human enables the human to be something that's very moldable and easily to manipulate, easy to tell what they are in order to tell them and define what they need to do in their lives, the lives they need to live, the ways they need to feel about themselves, about others, about society, about their own internal purpose for their existence. And so these programmings of mistrust are implemented in this matrix at a very early stage in development in our existence. And these cyclical patterns of mistrust and disconnect is the expression of the severing the cord, the source cord from source and the self. This holographic fractal of infinite consciousness becomes severed from its connection to source when it begins to mistrust itself. And mistrust is a parasitic expression. Okay, so anytime that we begin to mistrust ourselves or others, it immediately brings us into the mechanics of parasitism, which means that we begin, because we don't trust ourselves, because we don't trust others, we begin to look outside or in any other direction except inward in order to find support, safety, protection, connection, acknowledgement, all of the things and the basic needs that the human has for its multidimensional organism in order to embody and to feel empowered in its existence. Now, it's very interesting. If we look at nature, if we look at a leaf that grows on a tree, the leaf never questions its existence. It never questions whether it's going to die the next day because of a heavy storm or a wind. It exists in its full glory and its full expression. And that way of existing that we can learn from nature allows this organism to develop itself in any direction that it needs to develop in order to experience its highest potential. Its lifespan, whatever it may be, is free of judgment, free of compartmentalizing, free of categorizing whether something is good and bad. Now, us as humans, we are way more complex. So at a very early age, from the gestation process to the age of 7, we begin to learn what it means to trust. And the first person that we merge from, of course, is the mother. So this is the moment that we begin to learn about trust. And to learn about vulnerability as well. The child in itself doesn't know itself as vulnerable yet. It doesn't know itself as in danger. And that state of being is an incredible freedom, that childlike state that is very inquisitive and willing to explore and willing to express, because it yet hasn't experienced structural indoctrination for any way of its expression, defining good and bad in its expression, its very natural expression. And so as children, we are born with this wide ability to express, but the child is also very sensitive. So if the child begins to feel in the womb very powerful mistrust from the mother, powerful feelings of rejection, confusion, uncertainty about whether even the child should come to life or whether they're going to have survival or their needs met as a mother, caring for the child. Any one of these subconscious belief systems or belief systems that are deeply rooted in their body begins to penetrate into the child. And the child is the one that begins to absorb. And of course, as we mentioned before, creates its perception for how it's going to experience life moving forward, how it's going to perceive survival, the need and the application of survival. So when the child is born into the environment, depending on how the parents have dealt with their own trust in their own selves and their understanding of trust, creates an environment for the child to begin to learn what safety is and what safety isn't, what it means to survive, what it means to suffer, to experience pain, to experience separation. And the experience of separation goes deep into the mind, into the psychology of the child through fragmentation. So anytime the child has a moment, again, of unknown or feeling of helplessness, hopelessness, overwhelmed, and doesn't have the tools to be able to adjust to what is occurring around them, this immediately creates fragmentation. It's the definition of trauma. So the trauma that the child incurs in that moment, and of course, as children, we have many of those moments, the moment we begin to experience pain, contrast, suffering, right? And there is a moment in the child's life that they don't know that yet. That's something that's learned. They see it through demonstration. They learn through the examples of those around them. And absorbing these programs, these belief systems, really hinders the ability for the child to be able to experience everything. And of course, it's trial and error throughout the child's childhood going into adulthood. But as the child begins to experience suffering and pain, it learns what it doesn't want to experience and what it does want to experience. From the psychological part of it, the fragmentation that occurs with the child creates different kinds of personalities, different perceptions in a way, different selves. Those different selves that are created by fragmentation have different needs. And oftentimes, because there's a disconnect between that need and the experience, there's a very huge blind spot in the ability to be able to meet those needs. So this point of trauma becomes a reference point, one which we often go back to. That reference point is encoded with a lot of emotional stagnation because the emotions that the child didn't know were okay to feel or to fully process and develop from those experiences become stagnant within that organism, within that fractal of itself. So these microfractals, these fragmentations of the self, then over time accumulate and create belief systems. And so what ends up happening is that the child that goes into adult is confused. They have so many aspects of themselves with unresolved needs, and just underlying emotions that have never been dealt with. And it's those underlying emotions that define the vibrational frequency of the person, of the individual, but also their emotional state and the way that they feel about themselves. So a lot of times this begins to erode very deeply into their feeling of confidence, of worthiness, of the ability to feel whole, complete, okay, acceptable. And all of these different belief systems and programs begin to destroy their ability to feel confidence and self-worth. So it's advisable that this is caught early on. And for those of you that are parents, it's really important to review our relationship with our children in the things that we define for them as good and bad, to allow them to understand, to navigate, to experience all these potential aspects, and to discover and hopefully try to experience for themselves in a compassionate way what those look like. looking at the different facets of these experiences. As adults, when we look back at these childhood aspects of ourselves that have been fragmented, what we're going to discover is really that our entire personality, our nervous system, our muscle system, our entire multidimensional body has been programmed emotionally and energetically and in the nervous system in order to survive and to navigate these experiences, dodging suffering, what we have defined as suffering, what we have defined as bad. And so that creates a lot of dodging in how we experience life, how we present ourselves. This creates what we know as the personality. And what we need to understand is that personality is it's an expression, but it's also an illusion. It is a temporary facade that is a product of programming. And that personality isn't who we innately are. It is usually constructed by survival mechanisms, and also positive things that occur to us create our personalities. But in this ability to embody your highest expression, a lot of times we have created belief systems in order to limit suffering that actually limit our ability to come into our highest expression, or to be able to manifest or to reach the goals that we actually want to reach. In this deep self-discovery, you will find that there's a lot of different things about who you are that you have defined. And the question here is to identify which of those aspects are in your highest good. Which of these aspects of yourself are truly in alignment with your highest expression? And this is the question that we get a lot. What's my purpose? What am I here to do? What's my highest expression? A lot of us, and most of us, are completely confused because we have lived an entire life of honoring a lot of these false concepts and illusions of the matrix and false ideals of ourselves and others. And it's taken precedence over who we are as a core self. How do you identify who that core self is by beginning to deprogram all of the false programs that we've taken on. And what you'll find at the very core of that is something very neutral, a neutral self that really is actually beyond any of the definitions that we've taken on due to these traumatic experiences in life. And this neutral self now actually has encoded within its genetic code, within its true core expression outside of this matrix programming, a very unique, innate vibrational frequency. And it's not so much as a purpose that is available for you, but it's your highest expression. And that highest expression is encoded with genetic data that is a culmination of all of the lives that you've existed in, are existing in simultaneously, and future aspects of yourself in all dimensional layers that you can access. So these can be angelic aspects of yourself, interdimensional aspects of yourself, past life aspects of yourself. All of this information is available to you, and the information that is available to you allows you to be able to access your highest expression. So the beauty about this information and how it relates to you coming into your highest expression is that when we learn how to tap into this neutral self, you actually have access to information of infinite amounts of information. It's a library that is connected to the DNA of the earth, but also interdimensional information about yourself. You can access higher intuitive abilities, healing abilities, all kinds of gifts that are encoded, that are a part of your genetic data that you can access. But let's bring it now closer to home. Before we begin to access these things, and when we do access them, most of you that have been doing a lot of this work for many years already have reached the point where they can access some of these tools. Intuition is one of them. But what happens is that we've reached this point, and as soon as we start receiving the channeled messages or the information that is available for you, because we still have the a profound subconscious mistrust in yourself. And you continue to want to, this is the ego, wants to continue like a muscle reflex that is programmed, return back to needing to have a definition or a personality or a persona of a self that is created. It is very difficult to be able to disidentify and tune in to these pure form information. And because of the inability to come into that neutrality, we often taint what we're receiving from this pure source of information. We taint it with fears, with limiting belief systems. We taint it with all kinds of emotions that are a product of programming rather than pure source observation. The pure source observation actually is neutral. It is the 0 point, and it is the point in which it can begin to embody unconditional love, bliss, and its vortex moving at the highest vibrational frequency, which will align it to information that matches that. And during the process of evolution, we are ascending along with this entire multi-organism. And in this current time, opening higher strands of information for the collective. The veil is thinning. We have access to more intuitive and interdimensional aspects of ourselves collectively. So one thing that we have to learn collectively as a human race during this time, during this timeline, is to trust the self. And it's one of the biggest, challenges that the human has in the three-dimensional dualistic experience. The ability to trust the self is the ability to know the self as source. And our disconnect from that understanding is what hinders and blocks your progression and your activation of your DNA as well. Many different organisms are organic aspects and tools and faculties of your multidimensional self are stagnant because of that. And many of you that are already here, mostly here on this channel as well, have many lifetimes in which you have reached high points of ascension, very, very high points of ascension. And chances are that something interfered with your ability to transcend in that experience. Usually what I find by looking at many past lives is it's always the same thing. The Magi, the Druid, the Horus, whatever it is, this high dimensional being had a moment of mistrust, confusion, disconnect. It forgot to see itself as all. It saw itself as that little identity self for that moment and severed the ability for them to manage that life force in a way that was responsible, in a way that was compassionate, in a way that is best for the whole, which is themselves and the all. And this is really what the responsibility of us as source is to carry out, is to become aligned with true self in order to be able to discern what is best for this self and the collective. And it goes beyond the limiting belief systems of the matrix, which always want to define, compartmentalize, and separate things. And so this is something that it's a new way of thinking. It's a next level of thinking beyond this construct in which we live, but it's one that we really have to learn in order to help pull forward humanity, to be able to learn how to see, hear, and sense multidimensionally. Anytime that we continue to block ourselves or cage ourselves into definitions is where we begin to again want to embody separation and live as separation. So this is the unity consciousness that we are all eventually moving towards together. But in our lives, how does it affect us now here? All of this affects you here and now. But how can we begin to build that self-trust? The self-trust is the foundation to learn how to heal yourself, physically, emotionally, mentally, and multidimensionally. Whether you're having parasitic interdimensional contact, or whether you are learning how to intuit something, heal yourself, your family, you will need to trust yourself in order to discern how to move life force through you. And because of the lack of mistrust, we have major severing points within the multidimensional body, primarily in the heart center, which is the area of self-worth, self-love, the acknowledgement, and the ability to see the organism as source is housed in the heart center. The heart center is the node that merges the vortices of the body that are moving life force, that open the gateways of life force, connecting the non-physical with the physical. The next point that becomes stagnant is the crown. That's the next point in the physical body, in which, again, the vortices of the DNA movement of life force through the body begins to sever, because this is the non-physical into, again, the physical. So these two, heart and crown chakra, begin to create blockages. And these, usually those that have an open heart already, but cannot manifest in this life what they need in order to move forward, is because they have lots of blockages in the crown. And those blockages are lifetimes and lifetimes and lifetimes of the same belief system, that you have come into a bloodline that is continuing to believe that as well. Okay, so in a sense, we all as humans have a certain level of mistrust and doubt in ourselves, some of us deeper than others, and we need to understand how to uproot those belief systems for the health of this organism. So it's really important when we're working with this. How do we build trust? The trust comes with having confidence in the self. So number one, you need to know all parts of you. Okay, so as a child, you created these separate parts of you due to fragmentation, and you created in the subconscious mind the belief system of what is right and what is wrong, what is acceptable, what is not acceptable. So these two aspects of ourselves that are fragmented, we need to see them, we need to acknowledge them, and we need to work with them and reintegrate them. So in the work that we're going to do today, in today's meditation, is we're going to begin to look at all of these fragmentations that we have done of ourselves throughout our lives, to begin to address, acknowledge, bring to light, and reintegrate. What you'll discover is that when you meet the needs of these fragments, and when these fragments become acknowledged, heard, and healed, they begin to transform. And there is a release, there is a life force that is returned back to them. That is you becoming aware of yourself as this fragmented self. That awareness that you bring to this fragment allows you to expand your multidimensional body, to heal and to move life force through these areas in which this point exists in your multidimensional body. So this allows for healing. This allows for more intuitive abilities, because you are opening the runways of life force that have before been blocked. And I guess from the psychological part is that as you begin to look at the shadow parts of yourself that you have defined as shameful, unacceptable, not good enough, all of these parts of you begin to find themselves. And how do they heal? Is by reminding them that they are actually source as everything and nothing at once. That state of being everything and nothing at once allows you to alleviate from any compartmentalized blockage, definition of good and bad that you might be stuck in that point. And returning that life force, you are also channeling source into this fragment of yourself. So the more fragments of yourself that you reconnect with source, the more you are expanding as a multidimensional organism, because that's like, it's almost as if this lamp begins to rise higher and the body of light begins to expand, seeing everything that was in the shadows So you can see actually the full totality of what you are. You are everything that is within those shadows. You are everything within that light. And we have infinite amounts of expression that we have access to seeing and experiencing. So the idea in becoming whole or seeing yourself as source is to be able to see yourself as the all. Every single fragment of yourself that you bring light to, every fragment that you become aware of, is you seeing yourself more and more as all. So this is a really empowering way to begin to work with this kind of programs that we have. And we can begin to shift any blockages that have occurred. So let's get started. We're going to start by inhaling deeply. Go ahead and visualize grounding yourself down to the center of the earth, becoming aware of your energetic field. Okay, we're going to go to the root chakra, shrink it down to the size of a dime. Down to the sacral chakra. Down to the solar chakra. You're going to open the heart chakra, the throat, and the third eye. Okay. Okay, you're going to go ahead and bring up a healing life force. You're just going to bring it up. It can be any color that represents healing for you. Go ahead and visualize pulling that up into the body, creating a vortex of life force around your body. It's just a basic running energy meditation that we're going to start with, and then we're going to deep dive. Okay, you're going to bring cosmic energy down from the crown of the head, combining. You're going to send 10% back down to the center of the earth. 80% out to the crown of the head. And you're going to take that final 10% and bring it into the body, penetrating into the pores, the flesh, the muscles, the bones, down to the cellular level. Allow your body to absorb, letting go of any heaviness that you have taken on from your day or night. Allowing yourself to nourish the body. Breathing deeply. With every breath you take, absorbing into the body. Okay. So I want you to go ahead and tune in now to the feeling of mistrust. Go ahead and tune into that. Bring up that feeling in your body. Breathing deeply. Okay, go ahead and tune into that aspect that does not trust. And as you do this work, you might see many parts of you over the past week that haven't trusted. Let's go ahead and explore the past week. Just beginning to notice how many times do you feel something coming on and then kind of restrict yourself or hold back? How many times do you doubt your intuition? How many times do you not listen to the little gut feeling that comes up when you are choosing something, doing something? How many times do you completely ignore your body when it tells you something? How about external to you? How many times do you feel that others are not trustable, that we don't trust. Take a look at that. Observe your body language as soon as you tune into that mistrust. Notice the emotions that come up. And we're going to dive deep into those in just a minute. But go ahead and observe this mistrust. Breathing deeply. Okay, as you begin to observe yourself, I want you to go back to the past year to observe your relationship with trust over the past year. And I'm pretty sure in the past 2 years, it's been tested by global events. And trust me that this is a reason. There's a divine reason for the topic of trust to be very highlighted at this time. It's because we really need to learn how to trust ourselves in order to navigate what's coming, because a lot is coming, a lot of change. So go ahead and review now over the past year things that have caused you mistrust, either in yourself or in others. Notice your level of suffering in that moment, your emotions. What does it trigger when you start to mistrust someone else or something you hear? Breathing deeply. Okay. So as you keep going now, I want you to take yourself back now to your childhood. And we're just going to gently observe our life. I want you to see if you can take yourself back to the womb. And in the womb, take a look at any feelings of trust or mistrust that you may have tuned into in that moment. If it's not there, that's fine. Just observe what you were feeling in that womb. Okay, you're going to come into birth now. Go ahead and observe yourself at the time of birth. Okay, what did you feel at the time of birth? Take a look at your relationship with trust. Feeling safe, feeling unsafe. Okay. You'll notice that different parts of your body begin to light up or begin to speak out to you when you are going through these memories. This is really important to notice. Those of you that are more sensitive are going to really feel it in the body. And others of you, you're just going to have a lot of memories that you may not have even remembered. Okay, because right now you're reading your holographic DNA. That's what you're doing with me right now. So as you begin to observe childhood, adolescence, and adulthood, just notice your relationship with trust. How early can you recognize that you mistrust? How early did you feel that it wasn't safe to trust? Maybe it wasn't even your mistrust. Maybe it was mother's mistrust or father's mistrust. Go ahead and tune into that, because as a child, we absorb all of that. We take it on as our own, because a child has a very hard time knowing the difference between themselves and their parent. It becomes enmeshed, fully identified, and it believes that everything that happens outside of it is a result of its own existence. And that causes a lot of suffering, because it's not true entirely. So as you begin to see that child Just notice adolescence, and when we kick into our hormonal stage in our lives, this aspect of mistrust really comes into play, because this is when we start to experience duality in the physical. We begin to see ourselves as our sex, feminine, masculine, whatever the organism identifies with in that moment. It immediately begins to create, from this very childlike, unified way of looking at sex, into now separation. There is a separation between feminine, masculine. And that definition is felt within the body. It's felt within the subconscious mind. And so we begin to perceive things even more as separation when we come into that puberty stage. Okay, so this is, biological, chemical, and emotional in the physical body. So as you begin to observe your relationship with trust, notice around what age you began to feel mistrust. And I want you to take yourself back to those parts of you that have felt mistrust, and go ahead and sit with those parts of you. Taking a moment to feel that mistrust in your body. Where does it live? Where in your body does that mistrust live? Take a look at that. Okay, you're going to sit in that part of your body, and you're going to be present with the feeling of mistrust. And as you feel the feeling of mistrust, I want you to name out all the emotions that begin to arise. Go ahead and name out the emotions that are rising up as you tune into the feeling of mistrust. Be very observant of what comes up for you. Without any judgment. Notice how it formed your perception of the feminine and masculine. You'll notice that depending on who you took on that belief system, you formed ideas about the opposite sex, about feminine, masculine, about truth, about creation, about counter-creation, about shadow and light, about good and bad. And just compassionately look at yourself in these different ways of looking at the world that you've created for yourself as a result of mistrust. I want you to select the emotion that most is triggered by the feeling of mistrust. Notice where in the body that emotion lives. Sit with that emotion. Be absolutely present with this emotion. I want you to notice how this emotion has driven your life. Have you become a slave to this emotion? Has your life been dedicated to avoid this emotion? Have you become this emotion? Is it at the foundation of your personality, your limitations, and your abilities to expand? Just notice if any of these emotions have caused you a paralysis in your life, in your ability to move forward, change, shift, discern. We're going to sit with that emotion for a moment. And I want you to look at all of the fragments of yourself throughout your entire life that have felt this powerful emotion. Take a look at all of the parts of you that have felt this profoundly deep emotion as a result of mistrust. You're going to see them in a crowd in front of you. So go ahead and take a moment now to heal them. You will utilize your intuition to heal this part of you. What is the opposite of this emotion? Begin to gently introduce the opposite, the higher octave, higher frequency of this emotion into this part of you, or many parts of you that you see before you. What is it that you need from yourself in order to embody this higher octave self? Many of you might say courage, bravery. Okay, so what is it that you need from yourself in order to be courageous, to be brave? Okay, so you might notice that you begin to look at the different fragmentations, the ways that we see things as separate, that separation that causes us to feel unsafe in our state, the judgment that causes us to feel judged, separate, unsafe. Okay, so what would be the opposite of judgment and separation? Observe yourself. Okay. Go ahead and ask yourself, what is it that you need in order to accept the parts of you that you reject, that you neglect, that you judge, that you see as bad? What do you need from yourself? Go ahead and provide all of your fragments of yourself, everything that you need in order to see yourself as one rather than separate, as good, neutral, both good and bad at once. Okay. And you'll immediately begin to notice a higher octave of frequency that is available to you in that moment. So I want you to take every single one of your fragments and begin to open the runway of life force from source into every single one of them. We do that by opening the heart center, and that means that you move this part of you into the feeling of unconditional self-love. So as you begin to see every single fragment of yourself, allow them to embody unconditional self-love. Breathing deeply. Take a look at them. As they begin to embody unconditional self-love, they begin to expand. They begin to liberate themselves from these heavy belief systems, thoughts, and they begin to adjust their perception from this judgment, separation, fear into unity and love. Go ahead and see all of the fragments of yourself beginning to expand, heart center, love themselves unconditionally. And in that self-love is embodied the bliss, the ecstasy of recognizing themselves as source. And every fragment of yourself that begins to recognize themselves as source begins to vibrate higher. All of a sudden, you begin to notice that those fears, fragmentations, limitations, that paralysis of the parts of you that have not been able to move forward now find liberation. You're going to see all these fragments of yourself merging into one in front of you. Go ahead and take a look at yourself in front of you. What is it you need from yourself in order to embody trust? What do you need in order to trust yourself? Okay. Go ahead and provide that for yourself. And as you see that part of you transform, I want you to inhale deeply, taking that back into your body. As you integrate with the root, the sacral, solar, heart, throat, third eye, and begin to replay for a moment how this new self begins to interact in the moments where we felt mistrust. Take a look at that. How do they handle these moments of mistrust now? Observe. Do they handle it differently? Notice their body language, notice their energy, the colors around them, their expansion. Notice how fluid things come through them now. Okay. So you have just opened a really large channel of yourself. With a nice deep breath, I want you to begin to work in the root chakra. You're going to spin that root chakra as fast as possible. You're going to eliminate all of the programs in the root chakra of mistrust. Okay, every limiting belief around trust, you're going to just eliminate it from the root chakra. Going up to your sacral, the same. These are going to be a lot of interrelational programs around trust. Go up into the solar plexus now. These are trust programs about self-empowerment, being self-empowered or not self-empowered. Go ahead and release all of those programs. A lot of times people that don't trust themselves have a lot of anger because they feel so helpless throughout their entire life. There's such a severe disconnect. So go ahead and clear that out of the solar plexus. Going up into the heart chakra now. This is about worthiness. Do you trust that you are worthy? Do you trust that you belong and that you are in the right place in the right time? Do you trust that you belong in this body, in this life? Okay, there's nothing in this universe that exists superfluously or without purpose or without meaning or without infinite things that came into place in order to create space for the existence of that. So your existence is incredibly important to the collective movement of this organism. So immediately dissolve any belief system. Everything that we experience in life is actually meaning. There is cause and effect. And we are either caught up in those patterns of cause and effect, or we wake up and we break those patterns. It's up to us. Okay, you're going to go up into your throat. Go ahead and visualize spinning that throat chakra, letting go of any kind of mistrust in our ability to communicate, to express. Do you trust what you say? Do you trust your communication? Do you trust what you channel? Do you trust what others say? Clear that out. Okay, you're going to go up into the third eye. Go ahead and spin that third eye chakra as fast as possible. Eliminate all of the programs around your intuition. This is really huge because this is where we start tuning into many past life blockages of the ability to utilize life force, cultivation of your chi. So as you begin to take a look at all the programs around trusting your inner voice, your intuitive voice, clear all of those out. And you're clearing them out of all dimensional layers. Any parts of you that feel fear at the unknown, begin to clear all of that out. Fear of the unknown. Going up into the crown, this is mistrust in your ability to manifest. Do you doubt that you are able to survive without being dependent on, let's say, a 9-to-5 desk job, or a relationship that's codependent and toxic, or an environment that is toxic for you. These are things in our environment that we are attached to because we believe that without it we would be unsafe. So go ahead and clear out those programs. Returning back the trust into yourself to be able to embody empowered states of yourself as sovereign, meaning an individuated aspect of source, which means this individuated aspect of yourself sees yourself as all. You are all. You take responsibility for what you are, and you discern consciously what you are taking and experiencing from the external world. This is very important. So you're going to go up now into the 7th, 8th chakra. Go ahead and activate the 8th, 7th, and 8th. Activate the 9th. And these layers have to do with our out-of-body aspects of ourselves. So do we trust what we are experiencing in out-of-body experiences, in our dream state? Okay, do we trust ourselves to navigate those dream states in a state of consciousness and sovereignty? Do we doubt what we are experiencing? Okay, this is also where we start to interact with parasites and parasitic entities, attachments, beings, interdimensional beings, ETs, whatever you want to define them as. All of these interactions, do you trust what you're experiencing? Do you trust that you are empowered, or do you believe that they are more powerful than you? So this is very important. Begin to dissolve all of those doubts of yourself as you, again, see yourself as source. Okay, going up into the 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th dimensional plane. Activate the chakras in the higher levels. And in these higher levels, it's more of the same, but in a more profound way. So begin to dissolve that. And above you is a powerful white light of source. I want you to connect up into source. And you are this unconditional love. You are this infinite potential. So as you begin to anchor that source into your body, as you see yourself as that source, anchor it into the center of the earth. Okay. And you're going to open your eyes, and with your eyes open, you're going to see your grounding, your protection. You're going to see your chakras in the body. Okay, welcome back. I want to thank you so much for joining me today. It was so much fun to work on this with you. If you guys have any questions, please put it down in the messages below. And I'm just going to tune into the chat really quickly and say, hi, Blanca Iris, so good to see you. Truth Seeker, wonderful to see you as well. Nurse Tanib, hello, everyone, welcome. Teach me to believe in trust like a leaf. Yes, exactly. Trust your existence. Trust that you are worthy. I love that. Blank Iris, this is extremely beautifully explained. Geraldine, thank you for taking the time. Thank you for being here, Blanca. What about temptation? Yeah, so temptation, and I was debating whether we should talk about desires in one of these days. I'm not sure if it's directly related to this challenge specifically, but it's a very important aspect of ourselves where when we deal with our desires, we because of the programming that we received, usually stemming from religious beliefs in which sin was incorporated into the belief system of something that is shameful, impure, or an inversion, right? So there's a differentiation between what is sinful and impure. And these concepts have been inverted through religion, through different kinds of cultures as well, in which we believe that certain things are not pure. What is pure, right? Looking at source, which is infinite potential, you cannot categorize something as good and bad when you think of it as source. It exists. There is a purpose for that existence, which is a result of cause and effect that started at some point, and the accountability of those causes that resulted in this effect is something that we need to become aware of. Our shadows live within the darkness of that unconsciousness. They live within the darkness of unknowing and not understanding what we judge as sinful, impure, or not good. So when we begin to dissolve these shadows and to see them, the parts of us that have these deep desires, whether it's for sex, whether it's for food, any kinds of pleasures, notice how the majority of us, we connect pleasure with sins. And that's programming. That is a programming that has been done. We see it in media, we hear it in music, the inversion of all that is divine and pure. And they usually sex, because sex is the most powerful creative life force. And when you invert that, you begin to sever the pure ability of transmutation and co-creation that the human innately has. So it's very important for us to begin to remove the inversions of belief systems and screens that we have around what is divine, what is pure, what is good, what is bad. And therefore, the mechanism that desires those things will begin to come into a state of neutrality. And what we need to understand with temptation is, what is the true need? Okay, so is the true need the fear self that is a result of the ego that is trying to protect a certain part of it? Okay, desire can be anything, or temptation to do something bad, like, for example, shoplift something. So let's say that temptation to want to take something from a store, there's a need in this person that they feel that that's the only way that they can have something, or the only way that they can have a need met, or even get attention. Okay, there's any number of reasons why the organism would choose to do that. We have to understand the root. And what we're going to discover by looking at many people that examples that are trying to, nourish that temptation or that need, is that there is a need that needs to be taken care of. And that need is always going to result in love. It's always going to be the need for love. And, I'm telling you this because after a lot of process and going down the emotions, you yourself will discover that the root of all emotions is fear and love. There's many different iterations of that. And when we get to the root of it, we are always choosing between these two. And either of these can stem and create cause and effect patterns that result in different directions. So it's not always that, the choosing the love necessarily is the right one for you in that moment. Sometimes we need to create destruction in order to heal, in order to let go of something that's not good for us. So this is different ways of looking at it, but temptation is really about asking, what is the true need? And feeding that need, you being the provider of that need, because everything comes from us. So this is, I hope that answers that question. Let me know if that clarifies that, Blanca, if you have any more questions. Liza Geisel, thank you so much for being here. Future Well. Bob Berkins, thank you for being here. Good evening, Universal Lights. Thank you so much for that. Eric Okami, welcome. Man from Daytona, thank you. Awesome. Man from Daytona says, in my hood, there are several neighbors that like to put extra exhaust pipes in their car and bikes, make horrible noises. What makes people do that? I fail to understand. Negative entities? Yes, you asked me this yesterday, actually. And I think the more important question really is, why does that trigger you? Okay, and what's happening there? There's deep subconscious belief systems of being disempowered and not having control over the environment. This is something that's always going to be true. We can never control what is happening external to us. The only thing we can control is how we perceive them, and more importantly, the kind of chemicals and emotions that we're releasing in the body as we respond to them. So it's really important to understand that to have compassion and love for the self means that we're addressing and being compassionate, cultivating a healthy environment in the body as we are responding and interacting to these things in the world. And what we'll find, believe it or not, is that through our alchemical shift, we are going to begin to change things that happen outside of us. But our intention isn't to change them. The intention is to master the self first. And, there's many techniques that we can utilize as well, but we need to utilize the first one, which is embodying unconditional self-love first, which means changes in our own personal life before we start asking for them externally. Second to that, there are ways to become invisible, as I mentioned in some other classes, in order to deflect this energy. We talked about that person potentially needing attention, which is usually why people do things like that. And so understanding why there is a mirror in that, because these experiences, this person literally moved into the neighborhood because they're in resonance with a collective program that is within all of the organisms in that area. Okay, and I know people will hear that and they're going to say, I don't think so, or I don't want that to be true. But this is how organisms group together. We come together in order to carry out collective lessons and experiences. Okay, and I have to tell you, I had the exact same thing happen to me last year. And when some shifts changed, that person never came around our neighborhood anymore. So I'm talking from experience. As this very precise example that we can begin to shift external events by shifting internally first. Okay, hi, Truth Seeker. Yep, thank you, Heart Traveler. Thank you so much. Mosaic, much love. John Road, thank you so much. Thank you for being here. Piora, much love to you. You are helping me change and improve my life after disability 20 years ago. Thank you. Simply is not adequately enough. I'm so happy to hear that, Truth Seeker. I love it. Thank you, Geraldine. I understand now. Thank you for doing that work. I'm so proud of you, and I'm proud of everyone that's here doing this work. Sounds like the see me vibe. Yeah, and we all have different versions of that. So we just have to, move extra learning from good answers to questions. I know. So ask questions. We always have actually juicier topics in the questions. I love to hear what's going on with you, taking the pulse on what's happening in the collective. Actually, I wrote that question for you after you explained how there have been obstacles that have been hindered our ability to ascend or stay stuck in many past lives. Yeah, absolutely. Wow, maybe the same loud guy in your hood came to mind. Exactly. Possibly misunderstood and possibly one looking for the resonant alliance. Possibly. Yeah. All right, my loves. Have an amazing night and I will see you tomorrow. Much love. Bye-bye.